How's it going today? Steve Horseman encouraged me, challenged me to do a follow-up video to the article I wrote this week titled "Suicide is Painless." Yes, the actual act of suicide, if you do it right, is painless, but it leaves a lot of pain and wreckage in its wake. That was the point I was trying to make. In fact, the reason he asked me to do this is he kind of could tell there was more to it than just the article. And if you would discuss this topic with me in the past, I would tell you suicide is never the answer, and that is true. And then I would follow up with, unless you're a pedophile. If you're a pedophile, go ahead and kill yourself. And I had a line like that in the article, and I wanted Steve's input to make sure that wasn't a little bit too rough. And I think most of us are probably on the same page with that. What I didn't do when I'd have conversations with people regarding suicide, and while I strongly believe it is not the answer, if you lose your wife, your family, your business, everything, you still have yourself and your health. You can start over. It is just a season. It is just a horrible time. You'll get through it. Suicide is not the answer because it leaves your children wondering why you left them. And if you're watching this video and are having those thoughts, I want to encourage you to reach out and get some help. Talk to somebody. Do not listen to those thoughts. And what I don't typically share is how suicide has touched me. I was a sergeant in the National Guard after my active duty days while I was in college. And one of my soldiers, Sean Rooney, screwed up on weekend drill. Not going to go into what he did, but my last conversation with him was to rip him a new asshole. That following week, he took his .30-06 rifle and he killed himself. My last conversation was to tear him a new asshole. He was one of my soldiers. I was responsible for him. I was a 23-year-old sergeant. I didn't know he had depression. I didn't know he was struggling. And that was the memory I had, that was the conversation. And I was very fortunate. About a month later, I found out through somebody who investigated the suicide that my ass chewing didn't seem to upset him. It was other things that did, which I find kind of ironic because I really tore him a new one. And of course, the thing I told him not to worry about was what was bothering him. But the reality is he was one of my soldiers and I was responsible for him. And I still have an issue talking about this. The funny thing is, I had a half a dozen guys under me. I can't tell you any of their names. This happened in 1988, so you could tell it's left a mark. Today, as I was on the way to work, they were talking about veteran suicide and how it's on the rise. And it made me think of something else besides, if you're having these thoughts, to reach out, is to all of you who knows somebody who is going through some tough times. If you know somebody who is struggling, who seems that they have changed, have become a little more reserved, a little more quiet, and you noticed it and are thinking, hey, they don't seem just right, you need to reach out to them. Because the problem is, like Sean, nobody wants to talk about these problems they're having. Back in '88, nobody did. Now at least they are. Reach out, take some time, sit down knee to knee with these people, these friends, these coworkers, these family members, and ask if everything's all right. Do they need to talk? Is there anything you can do? It's a small thing, but it is a huge thing. That little bit of connection, making sure they know somebody cares about them, that they matter, might be what keeps them from making a horrible mistake. Because really, you can overcome about anything. You know, I was going to look up a bunch of success stories where people had lost everything and then had come back and bounced back. And, you know, we all know about those stories. We all know people who have lost everything in divorce. I am thinking of a specific friend. He lost half his retirement. He lost his house. He didn't have custody of his kids. He was quite despondent. And I will tell you, we are 4 or 5 years past that time frame. He is remarried, blissfully in love. He retired, lost half that retirement, has a job now that he loves and energizes him and fills his soul. And you would never know this man, how down he was, how depressed he was, and what he sounded like. And it's one of those things. You just got to get them to understand when they're going through this forest, this journey through the forest of shit, shame, despair, and misery. It's just a portion of the journey. They're going to get through it. They're going to be okay. And they're going to ultimately, if they choose to work on themselves and work on it, have an amazing life. We may not know what it looks like, but they're going to be okay. So remember, suicide is never, ever the answer. Okay? I want you, if you're watching this, if you know anyone who's going through a tough time and you've noticed changes in their behavior, I want you to reach out. You know, if you're watching this and you're having these type of really dark thoughts and you don't feel comfortable talking to family members or friends, reach out to one of the coaches here in our groups. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 800-273-8255. Don't listen to those thoughts in your head. I want you to decide that you're going to work on changing those thoughts right now, and I promise you things will get better. I promise you they will. Thanks, guys.